Okay, guys, today we are going to work with our classmate data that we collected yesterday. And since we went around and had other people typing in our data, your data will look different than mine. We should all have names and age, siblings, pets, and numbers. And then this last category you came up with on your own, it was supposed to be a number, was the way that they would answer it. But we're going to work through this and see where we're at. Now, when I work on, for example, line 13, row 13, you may not be on row 13 because you have more or less entries. At this point, whatever entries you have are the entries you should keep. All right. So don't worry about adding more entries or trying to finish up. All right. So, first thing we want to do is what's called data validation. Data validation is something that a lot of people do actually for a living, and computers will do it for you. This one we're going to manually do. So this, if you look at my data here, I can see visually that there are certain pieces of data here that don't match the others. My column B here looks good. Everything's a number. Column C, somebody typed in the word none, even though they were supposed to type in a zero. So I'm going to go ahead and fix that. Column D looks good. Column E looks relatively good. I'm going to go ahead and just for purposes of my own use, anybody who typed in kind of a crazy number, they were just being silly. Maybe they just messed up, whatever. I'm just going to go ahead and fix it. So instead of 45 million or whatever this is, I'm just going to say 45. All right. So maybe that is William's real favorite number, but we're going to validate it to something normal. Same thing here, deep dish or thin crust. The directions indicated a number one should be a deep dish and number two should be a thin. So this person didn't follow the directions. So I'm going to go ahead and fix it. This person didn't follow the directions. So I can either fix it or I can leave it blank because I don't really know what their answer is supposed to be. Blank shouldn't really mess it up. It's just like that person's data is not there, so it's not valid. So that is called data validation. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at line 13 and we're going to start putting in some uh, labels here for calculations. Okay, so step 3 is doing our labels for calculations. I'm going to start in all caps and I'm going to put this in and it's going to be called total. And just kind of like what I did up here at the top, I'm going to make this stand out a little bit. And a lot of times for totals and subtotals and things like that, I like to align them to the right. So I'm clicking up here to change the alignment to the right. You can already see how that stands out a little bit differently. And I'm going to make it bold. And I'm actually going to go ahead and make this row, just where I'm calculating, a different color. I'm going to make it maybe a light pink. All right, so it stands out. Now, when I want to add together a whole series of numbers, there are actually 2 ways to do this. And I actually would like you to do both ways. The first way is like what we learned yesterday. Start a formula with an equal sign. So go ahead and type in an equal sign. Click this little X here to get rid of the suggestion. And I am one by one going to click on cell B2. So it types in the letter B2 or the cell address B2. And then I'm going to press in type in a plus symbol. All right, so I typed in a plus. And I'm going to click on the next cell, plus symbol, next cell, plus, all the way down. Last thing I do is click on this final cell. And you can see I didn't put a plus symbol at the end. Everything is lit up. Everything is included in my formula. So it is saying B2 plus B3 plus B4 plus B5 all the way down to B12. Yours could be pretty long depending on how many records you got. So I'm going to go ahead and press enter. It calculates it. 133. That's correct. What I don't want you to do is just type in a number. I need you to, if I were to double click on this, see the fact that you have an entire formula. And I'm going to press enter to lock in that formula once again. All right, now under number of siblings, I'm going to add this a little bit differently. I'm going to use what's called a function. A function is this tool up here. Looks like a sideways M or a kind of a funky E. It's actually called a sigma. It's a Greek symbol. So if I click on that, I will get a list. So I'm clicking on the arrow to get the huge list. It's got the top 5 most commonly used functions at the top. along with a ton of different categories, none of which we'll necessarily use in 6th grade. But for this one, we're going to use sum. So sum is for adding. All right. So we learned how to add over here, but if we want to add a huge list of numbers, using a function is kind of the same. First of all, we don't start with an equal sign, but we do want to click where we want our answer to go. So I'm going to go ahead and click in C13. Your address might be a little bit different. All right. Then I'm going to click this arrow and click on the function I want to use, which for this is sum. And then it comes up and it wants to know what's called a range. A range is, whoop, looks like it booted me out here. All right, that was weird. So I'm back signed in here. It says equals sum, and I'm looking for a range, like I said. So as long as I don't click on anything, it should work. So again, just to preview how I did that, I'm going to go ahead and delete this and undo it real quick. I click where I want the answer to go. Click on the little arrow next to my function tool, and I choose the function I want, which is sum. Then immediately I'm going to, without clicking on anything else, take my mouse and click and hold down on the very first number, and I'm going to drag down to the bottom. And you can see as I'm dragging, it's actually writing what's called the function C2 colon C12. That means add together everything from C2 to C12, the range. Right? And then I press enter, and it does it. All right. So those are two different ways to add. This is the big complicated way, useful if you just have a few things. And this is the function way, a little bit more useful. So I'm going to go ahead and click here. Again, click sum, click, drag, enter. And I'm going to do that for each of my categories. Click, drag, enter, click, sum, click, drag, enter. Notice I have a blank right there, but it shouldn't matter. And still edit these together. All right, perfect. So there's my totals. Now that we know how to use formulas and we know how to use functions, we're going to create a couple of additional functions here. So for example, underneath total, I'm going to also have the average. And I'm going to have the high. And I'm going to have the low. And I'm going to format these bold over to the right and with a background color of pink, just like my other answers here. All right, now let's start creating these. These are all a little bit more complex. They are functions. So we will start with average here for row number for me 14. Your row might be different, but I'm going to do it for age, which is column B. All right, so I'm going to click on average. And again, I'm going to click on my tool up here, my function tool. And I'm going to this time obviously go to average. Now, every once in a while, it'll try to estimate this for you and include everything, right? That would be wrong because you don't want to include the word total or the total number. Mine is doing it correctly where I clicked on it. It's looking for the range. So I'm going to click on the first one, drag down to the bottom, making sure I don't accidentally include the total, and I'm going to press enter. All right. Now, it's suggesting an autofill. That may or may not be correct. So I'm going to go ahead and click X because I'm not at this point good enough to know, is that right? Is it not? I can tell you it was not. So you definitely want to click X when it does that auto suggest. But right here is my function or my average. Notice it's a gigantic decimal, right? That decimal is correct because if you know how to add up or how to find an average, you just add everything together and then divide it by however many they are. And this one happens to be 11. So I would actually add all these together and divide them by 11. That's what this is doing. All right. So at this point, I'm not really worried about all those big, huge fractions. I'm just going to go ahead and, or not fractions, decimal points. I'm going to do the same thing here on number of siblings, number of pets, favorite number, and deep dish, even if it doesn't necessarily make sense. So again, click where you want to go, where you want the answer to go. Click on your function, make it average, click, drag, enter. All right, and I'm going to go ahead. Again, it's trying to get me to do this autofill. It's doing it wrong. So I'm going to click it there. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing here for number of pets, here for favorite number, and then for my custom category. All right. Now, if you have words over here on your custom category, you're discovering it doesn't work because you can't do mathematical functions on custom categories. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this and fill them in while you fill yours in. Okay, here we are back. I've got these all typed in. Notice there are a bunch of huge fractions or decimal points. My goodness. I'm going to actually go ahead and fix that. I'm going to highlight all of these. And I'm going to go up to this tool right here. It's called decrease or increase decimal places. I'm going to go ahead and roll this down to just 2 decimal places. All right, so it will round it for you. So if you know the rules of rounding, it will go ahead and round these, and that will make these look a little less crazy. So I'm just going to, again, that's this tool right here to round or to decrease the number of decimal places. All right, now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and do a function for high, which is the one called max. I'm going to do that all the way along this row. And then for low, I'm going to do the function called min. All right, I'm going to leave that to you to see if you can figure that out and work with your neighbor. I'm going to pause it while I do it and then come back to this video to move on with the next step. Okay, here we are. I've gotten back to my, unpaused my video. I've typed in my highs, which are max, and I've typed in my lows, which are my min, using these functions. All right, next, what we're going to do is we are going to add a column. What I forgot to do is I wanted to have numbers along the left side of all of my names, so I could easily tell how many there are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on column A, and it highlights all of column A. Then I'm going to right click on column A, and I am looking for insert one column to the left. Once again, how I did that was I clicked on column A, highlighted the whole column, then I right clicked with the other mouse button, insert one column to the left, and now I have a column. Now I'm going to go ahead and number my first 2 people. And if you remember to yesterday, we can do our interactive fill, or from 2 days ago, actually. What I can do is I'm teaching my interactive fill. So I'm going to take my mouse pointer and I'm going to select the number 1 and the number 2. And these will become the active cells. You can tell they're active because they're blue. And I'm looking for this teeny tiny little box in the bottom right corner. And I can tell that I have it when my pointer turns to a kind of a crosshairs there. And then when I click and drag down to my last name, it'll automatically fill in all those numbers. Okay, so go ahead and do that. That's a nice, quick, easy way to number all of these. Thirdly, I think this looks weird. So I'm going to go ahead and shrink down this column and make it smaller. So to do that, I'm going to take my mouse and I'm going to put it right here at the very top, right between column A and B. I can't do it down here. It has to be at the column headers. I'll get this little double arrow. When I get that double arrow, I can click and drag to change the size of that column. So I'm going to drag it down so that they all look a little bit more neat. In fact, I don't like the way that looks, so I'm going to get rid of those. I think it looks weird. There, now that's nice and clean. All right. Next, what I'm going to do is work with some of my numbers here to come up with a cool chart. And what I want to chart is I'm going to go ahead and try a couple of different things here. To do a chart, real quickly, I'm going to go ahead and click on name, and I'm going to select down, drag down to my last name, and then I'm going to drag over to age. So I've selected the word name plus everybody's names, also the word age and everybody's ages. And it does work better if you start at the top left and drag down to the bottom right. Don't include total, average, high, or low for this. Right? So just the names and their data. Then what we're going to do is we are going to insert a chart. So if you go to insert and then go down to chart, okay, you have to have your stuff selected first. Go to insert chart. And it will automatically try to put in a chart. Okay, so this chart, it's pretty good. I mean, it gives you some the names and all of their ages. You could go down here and switch the rows and columns, and then it will put in their age a little bit differently. I actually don't like the look of that one, right? So I'm going to go ahead and switch that one back. Where is it? Switch rows and columns. Let's switch that back. But for this type of data, what I want to do is I want to do a comparison. All right. So this is really good. This is a bar chart. This is if I want to see sort of a overall total, right? See what everybody's looking at. But I want to instead change the type of chart. So over here on the right side, I've got a column chart currently. That's what it just did with my data. I'm going to change that, and it's suggesting what I actually want, which is a pie chart. Now, if pie chart doesn't show up for you as suggested, you can scroll down and find a pie chart right there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click on a pie chart, and that is now giving me a little bit of a different comparison. Again, I can switch rows and columns. That doesn't work. I don't like that. So this is definitely a different type of comparison. Do I like this one? I don't know. I'm going to kind of click through these. So what I would like you to do is go through and experiment with some of these pies and charts, pie charts, bar charts. A line graph won't work for this because line graphs are for data over time, and this isn't over time. But once I have one that I like, let's just say I like this one, and we're going to get deeper into this obviously in the future. I'm going to go ahead and shrink this down. I grab the corner to shrink it down. I'm going to move it off to the left. All right. And now once I have this, I have a little chart of some sort. I've got some names. I got data. I've got all of these. I'm ready to go ahead and turn this in. So you're going to go to Google Classroom, submit it, and turn it in. Once you have it turned in, you can go back and work on some of your enrichment activities, and we will start a new spreadsheet tomorrow in class.